Well, welcome everybody this afternoon. I know that the slide says November 14th, but this one is the one that was rescheduled for today. So I definitely wanted to make sure that we didn't miss a session, but I'll explain a little bit here in just a second about what that's going to look like for credit. So again, this is session number 4 on data and instructional strategies. And it has been rescheduled from the 14th to today, the 21st. And so what that's going to mean for you is that if you, especially if you're not here, you won't hear that right now, but in the recording you will. I'm still allowing you to receive credit for this session, whether you could be here tonight or not. So if you could not be here tonight, make sure that you will still be required to watch the recording and fill out that participation form. And I will put all of that information in your follow-up email as soon as the recording is available. So be watching for that email. And again, it will have the participation form. If you're here with me tonight, I would recommend that you go ahead and fill that out so you don't forget in case you are seeking credit. If you're not seeking credit, there's no need to fill out the participation form. It'll just be, if you would like to, you're still welcome to do that, but it's not required. All right, so again, if you'll please put your questions in the Q&A. This is a webinar, and so I will not be able to see you tonight. Unfortunately, I wish we were in a big room together. I think I've said that every time, but it's true. I really wish we had an opportunity to do that. I know, having been a para myself, I know it's really hard. It's to find a time when we can all be together and not miss time out of your classroom. So yep, hold on just 1 second. I need to do something really quickly. Okay, Susan, if you'll see, I've made you a panelist, so see if you can jump in there. With it being a webinar, I think you should be that way. Yep, I see you. Perfect. So the way we're going to do this evening, if you have something that you need to be to and you can't be here, like I said, you will receive credit, but you will be required to watch that recording and fill out the participation form, because to receive credit, you'll be able to get a half credit, but you will be required to attend all 5, and that will count for that. There will be a form that you'll need to fill out after the next session, which will be on December 5th. And so make sure that you have all of those forms in before that, before I send out that form for you, because those things will be required for you to receive credit. All right, so let's get to tonight's session. The objectives we're going to talk about tonight, we are going to explore some data and data collection. This is not going to be an exhaustive list, so I want to make sure that you know that this is definitely not going to be an exhaustive list of data, nor collection or forms or anything like that. We're going to identify possible strategies to support academic, executive function, and social, emotional, and behavior. And I say possible strategies because, again, there's so many different kinds of strategies and different ways that things are done in different districts across the state. So I just want to make sure that this is not something that I'm not saying this is the way you have to do it or the only strategies. These are just going to be some possible strategies for you to consider and your supervising teacher to consider. And then finally, we're going to discover and practice matching those interventions to functional behavior. So when we think about data, I want to start out with this, because without data, all we have is an opinion. I know that sometimes, we we see things and we think, oh, this is the way it is. And yet when we actually collect data, there are many times that when we go back and take a look at that data, it changes our opinion. So, opinions are not objective. So data is, again, facts. Those are objective. We can see it, we can measure it. Data is not our personal opinions, feelings, or perspectives. And data should be, again, you'll see it here, taken in real time, needs to be objective, needs to be clear, concise, and consistent. That becomes really important when your supervising teacher and the IEP team is trying to make decisions based upon that data. And so again, you'll see here, it needs to be communicated and discussed with your supervising teacher. Make sure that when you're collecting it, make sure you're getting it to your teacher. But why is it important? Number one, it allows us to determine current levels of academics, of behavior, because we're not reliable reporters. It allows us to determine if the intervention that we implement is even successful. How do we even know if a challenging behavior is actually decreasing unless we have measured it initially? So we may say, well, yeah, it looks like they're getting better at it, but those are, again, our opinions. And unless we have that data to back it up, it's not going to matter. It allows us to determine if the intervention requires change or modifications. Sometimes when we're going through, so we even measure and take data on accommodations, right? Because how can we determine if that accommodation is even working over time, and whether it needs to be changed? So make sure that we're taking it down. It's really important to put down what is seen or heard and to avoid anything that's stigmatized by personal perceptions or an individual or specific behavior. Objective observations means watching those events without being affected by personal biases or prejudices. It means watching what's happening without guessing at the reasons that is causing the action, and watching the activity without judging whether it's good or bad, and producing an objective record that states exactly what you're seeing and hearing.
Dina, this is Susan. The
Yes.
PowerPoint is not on presentation mode.
Oh,
It's
well,
not on full screen.
it looks like I was presenting. Thank you for letting me know.
Sure.
I'm not sure what happened. It was in presentation mode. Let's see here. How about now?
Still no. We see a couple slides at a time, and then on the right, your notes.
That is interesting. Okay.
Not that it's a deal breaker. I just wanted you to know.
No, but it'll be really important that the slides are seen. So I'm going to pause the recording at this point and try this again. Give me 1 second. All right, sorry about that, guys. I had to pause the recording to fix the sharing. It was not being shared correctly, so I apologize for that. So let's get going. So when we talk about our key data points, some of the things that we may collect data on could be academics, like I said, accommodations. Maybe we're looking at attendance. Maybe we're looking at behavior itself or executive function. And definitely on those progress for IEP goals, maybe even social emotional. So when we take a look at this is just a fun graphic, and I won't take the time to go through this, but it will be in your slides. Just looking at different things that you can make sure you're doing, utilizing and understanding those forms. That's going to be really important. When your supervising teacher gives you forms to collect data on, make sure that you really understand how to collect that data on that particular form. And then definitely make sure that you're documenting the things that teacher needs, and not just things that you think they need. Make sure that they're being clear and concise about what's expected of you. And again, we talked about this early on. Make sure you ask plenty of questions to be sure that you are doing it correctly. And then making sure that, again, you're taking it objectively. So some of the different data collection could be anecdotal notes, which are written observations of the behavior and interaction. Maybe it's frequency. Maybe like during the 5 minutes that Mary was waiting for the principal, she cussed at me 4 times. There could be all kind of different frequency counts. Interval recording, which is observing and recording behavior during specific time intervals. Duration, tracking how long a behavior lasts. Like it took Sal 6 minutes to line up to leave to go to the library when he was asked to do so. Maybe their checklists or maybe their data sheets. And we're going to talk about one specifically today on ABC data. And we'll talk a bit about that in just a bit. This is just an example of an ABC data collection form. And I'm going to show you just one other one just so you can see how different they might look, but it's definitely collecting some of the same information. So again, there's lots of different forms, lots of different ways to do that. So just make sure that you have a clear understanding. And so now we're going to move on into strategies, and we're going to talk about, again, just a little bit. It definitely won't be an exhaustive list, but hopefully it can help you to understand that there's lots of different strategies for different types of things that we're trying to support. The first one we're going to talk about is supporting instruction. And this one, and it looks like my slide cut off, so I'll fix that before I share. But we're going to take a look at a couple of different ones in this format. Like, what does it look like? So supporting instruction, what does it look like? Supporting and encouraging a positive, safe learning environment, and always modeling behavior is one of the best strategies that you can do. Proximity, make sure you're getting up and you're moving around that room, especially if you're supporting the whole class or supporting students within a classroom. If you're at a kidney table or pull out somewhere else, make sure that if you have more than just a couple of students, which you shouldn't have more than, you shouldn't have a large grouping in that instance, but still make sure that you're moving around from student to student and not just being static. Provide support to help students participate and stay engaged. And then monitoring their understanding. This is so important. I can't tell you how many times I've seen in the past, we just keep going and going, and then we never really stop and make sure that the student is, number one, following, and number two, are they really understanding and making sure that they're able to keep up with what we're doing. Provide time for them to process and respond. This is huge, especially for so many of our students. That wait time is going to be just so important. And of course, I am sure that many of you have been involved in assisting your teachers in preparing and organizing materials. There's going to be many different times that they're going to need your help in that. And so one of these examples, and I'm not sure what happened to this, but like you could even say things like, I'm going to be helping other students. So if you need me before I get to you, have some kind of sign so that they can let you know, or give them some sticky notes or a way to keep track of if they have questions, because that's so frustrating when they're waiting for you to get done and they forget their question, or they're getting antsy. So I would make sure and talk to your supervising teacher about those kind of things. Like, what are the best ways to make sure that they have a way to keep track of their questions, or something to do in between while they're waiting so that they're not getting disruptive. All right, I put this one in there just to remind you that communication is definitely a strategy, and the way we communicate to our students can make such a difference. When they're getting loud, instead of saying no yelling, these are all negative on the left, all negative ways that we can say things. But instead, could we say something like, use a calm voice, use your inside voice, I was in a room once when I heard somebody say, use your 1 inch voice. And I thought, most of these kids didn't know what an inch was. So, make sure it makes sense to the group that you're talking to and the group that you're working with. And of course, those reinforcements. And so I'm not going to go through all of them. You can go back and look at these a little later, and just for sake of time. But just note that it's really important for us to make sure that the way we communicate is huge and can be a trigger in and of itself. Remember when we talked about don't poke the bear? Those things, the way we communicate is just so huge. And we know it is that way when we talk to adults. It is no different when we're dealing with our students. This is just a cute slide to remind us about that wait time. They need to be able to listen to the question. Sometimes they may need time to build up courage for responding, and maybe they need to process what they've heard. There's so many different reasons why that wait time is so crucial. Sometimes we don't wait long enough, and remember that cute little visual that I gave you early on when it talked about, sometimes the paras jump in and want to rescue, and sometimes we need to let them struggle through that and make sure that they can have time to come up with the answer if they are able to, right? We don't want to have that wait time be too long, but again, that sometimes a 3 minute wait, sometimes a minute wait, depends on the situation and the student. This is just a slide that I threw into. I know that there's been a big push, at least it was about 5 years ago when I was still in the classroom, the power of yet. I may not know it yet, right? And so make sure that we are looking at these mindsets and how to change those things. It's good enough, or is this my best work? Mistakes help me learn instead of I made a mistake. There's so many ways that we can help students shift their mindset so that they can be better learners, and they can be not just learners, but willing learners and seeking for more, right? So a mindset makes such a difference in the classroom. And I think that I've seen it totally turn kids around when we just help them with even some of these parts of it. So this leads us to executive function. I'm sure that many of you have heard this, but in case you haven't, executive function, it consists of many different processes that help individuals manage everyday life. And the Harvard Center for Developing Child likens executive function to the body's air traffic control system, where we plan, organize, and manage ourselves. And I do want to tell you, there's no one agreed upon definition exactly, but there is an agreement that the 3 core areas that make up executive function are working memory, self-regulation, and cognitive flexibility. Working memory is such a huge part and is a key factor in our academics. Critically, we find that working memory at the start of formal education is a more powerful predictor of subsequent academic success than IQ. I'm going to say that again. This was a study by Alloway and Alloway in 2010. And they said, critically, we find that working memory at the start of formal education is a more powerful predictor of subsequent academic success than IQ. So, as we go through some of these, I want you to think about that. And if this is true, if all this research there's many different piles of research that's out there that keeps coming back to this very thing. And so as we go through that, think about, when should we start working with students with executive function? If we were in the room, I would think I would hear many answers saying preschool, right? So make sure that, as we think about these things, and then again, is it ever too late to learn executive function? The answer is no. It might be a little harder, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later, but executive function skills are something that we continue to use throughout our entire lives. So cognitive flexibility is something that involves being able to adjust what you do when a problem arises. Can you shift? Self-regulation, of course, involves controlling your attention, your behavior, your thoughts. It's also referred to sometimes as inhibitory control. It's important because it involves the integration of a range of skills and behaviors that help all of us cope with everyday life, not just school. Executive function really touches everything that we do. So again, why do they matter for us in the classroom? It definitely can control and determine our school success. It helps with independence for students. It helps definitely in college, but it even helps them to be able to get there. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a little bit. You definitely want some executive function skills to not only get employed, but remain employed. It helps with decisions, helps with to have positive relationships, helps regulate our behaviors. And studies have even shown that the lack thereof of executive function skills can definitely cause us to have a decline in our mental and physical health. So very important. This is, again, sometimes you'll see if you look up executive functioning, some people have like a set of 13 skills, some have 10, some have 8. There's so many, like I said, different things, but this is some of the most popular. So that's why I pulled this one. Planning, organization, task initiation, flexibility, attention, self-control, metacognition, which is just thinking about your thinking, working memory, time management, and perseverance. This next one is, again, just another, you can see that there's a little bit less on this slide than there were on the other one. And so as we go through these, again, they might be called a little different, but they're all going to fit into a category that would be, that would still touch on those skills. So when do you use executive functioning skills? You as an adult, as a para, as a mom, as, maybe a friend, a daughter, whatever when do you use executive functioning skills? If you could put that in the Q&A, and I'll take just a second to look at those. When do you think you use executive functioning skills? Give me an example. Always. Yep, that is no doubt. During tests. Every classroom. Planning family meals. I'm glad you said that because that's one example that I had in my mind. When you go grocery shopping, you have to plan out which stores you're going to go to. You have to plan and organize with coupons or a sales flyer. You have to make a list, right? You're going to set out for that store. So that's task initiation. You have to use time management to get there at a time that works for you and gives you enough time to shop. While shopping, you'll probably use your working memory to figure out prices and best deals, while also using self-control to avoid indulging on foods on the no list. You may even have to adapt your list when the store doesn't have a certain item that you expected, so you have to be flexible there. You will most likely keep focused while shopping so you can get home on time. So you have to have that attention going, right? Finally, even if you're tired of shopping and the lines are horrendously long, you will stick to the task to finish and get the groceries home. So that's your perseverance. Sometimes I know I've gone into the store and the lines, are longer than I wanted, or, something else is going on, but I have to have that, especially like when we're shopping for Thanksgiving, right? We need those items. So, all right. This is going to be, and hopefully let me know right away, especially Susan, if you can let me know. I think I've clicked all the right things for you to be able to hear this video. This video is the infamous marshmallow test. It's a well-known experiment done by in 1972 by a professor at Stanford University. And he did this with nursery age or preschool age children. Um, the children were put into a room by themselves with a marshmallow or a favorite treat. And Dr. Walter Mischel is the one who conducted this along with his graduate student, Abby Evison. And they measured a child's ability to delay gratification. After the video, I want you to just pay attention to what's going on, but after the video, I want you to think about this. So the preschoolers are waiting 15 minutes, okay, to receive their preferred treat or that delayed gratification. Those that waited much less time when the treat was right in sight than when neither treat was in view. So they reasoned that they could wait a relatively long time if they believed they would really get their treat, right? If they waited, they're trusting that person to do what they said they were going to do. They found that they could wait if they shifted their attention away from the treats and if they occupied themselves with non-frustrating or pleasant internal and external stimuli, which is like thinking of fun things or playing with a toy. Watch these kids and see what they do. It's really interesting.
This is a bell, okay?
It's called the marshmallow test.
One goes.
We try to set up situations in which young children make a choice between two of something that you prefer later or one of something that you prefer a little less now.
If you had to choose, would you like to have one marshmallow?
Yeah.
Or would you like to have two marshmallows?
The whole point of the experiment is to set up an intense conflict between the two.
Now here's how we play this game. I'm gonna leave the room. While I'm gone, if you can stay here and wait for me to come back without eating the marshmallows, then you get 2 marshmallows.
Okay.
But if you don't want to wait, you can make me come back right away
The bell.
by pressing the bell. But then you get 1 marshmallow, not 2 marshmallows.
I won't ring the bell.
You won't ring the bell? Okay.
The conflict for the child is very heavy, is that about half will go one way and half will go the other.
Oh, you made me come back.
It's like a little window into willpower for dilemmas that everybody faces.
I wonder what's taking her so long.
What we found is a very simple and direct way of measuring a competence that seems to make an important life difference. The longer they were able to wait at age 4, the better the ratings of their ability to control themselves and to pursue their academic and other goals.
Please come back.
The kids who are able to delay gratification are increasingly learning ways of managing frustration, ways of managing distress. In middle life, there's less drug use, higher educational level attainment, much less likely to have lowered self-esteem, to engage in bullying behavior with other people. The correlations are clearly statistically significant, but that in no way means that a youngster who at age 4 didn't wait a long time is in any way doomed.
This is a bell.
Okay, so before we move on, I love that video. I especially love the little girl in the red shirt who is literally trying to control her arm from taking the marshmallow. I just think it's great. But I want you to think about what he said in there, like what those kind of things, learning early on, how it can change the trajectory of how we reason, how we, go about making choices. So those are some of the reasons I want to go into executive function a little bit with you tonight. Definitely, we don't have enough time to go into all of it, but I love teaching executive function. I remember being in the classroom and had an occupational therapist who was phenomenal at teaching executive function. and bringing in a child's desk when we had a child who was just consistently unorganized, consistently unable to regulate any of those things, unable to bring his homework, even know where his homework was, obviously. I just remember her bringing the desk into our resource room and going through all of these different executive functioning things and teaching those skills explicitly to this child and showing him how to organize. Many times we just say to kids, whether they're young or in high school, we just say, get organized. You've got to have your stuff organized. You've got to make sure you know where all your things are. If they don't have the skills, they don't even know where to begin. And so, and I'm certainly not telling you, it is your supervising teacher who would be teaching those skills explicitly. However, you would be that support person to make sure that those skills are being practiced and helping them along the way with those. And so, but I want you, if you've never been exposed to executive function, I wanted you to have an understanding, a little different understanding of what that means, what that might look like. So in this slide that you're looking at right now, executive function, where do those skills even come from? Well, you can see right there, they're in our frontal lobe. And if you know about the brain, when do we even start learning to use our frontal lobe? Anybody want to take a guess? Do you know what age we start finally using those kind of skills? What age are we when we start using those executive functioning skills? Yeah, we're in our 20s. Mid-20s, most of us. Sometimes people can start a little earlier, but most of those things don't come to full fruition until we're in our mid-20s. And so I think that, it says that the neurological skills required to perform these executive functioning skills are not even fully developed in adolescence. The brain's frontal lobe that controls our executive function doesn't fully develop to our mid-20s, like I said. Combine this pre-developed state with other factors such as increased hormones, changing levels of neurotransmitters. It's a prime reason why so many of our teens today are struggling to successfully use these skills. And this means that more teenagers do not have the neurological function to develop soft skills necessary for the workplace even. So the one thing that you need to know, and you'll see this a little later, but the one thing you need to know is these kind of skills are not innate. We're not born with this. They need to be taught. And so these are definitely something, and you can start to see how many adults do you know who don't do a very good job using their executive function skills. Good thing we're not in the same room, but there definitely, you can see that where not just kids, there's definitely adults who don't do a good job using their executive function either. So again, these are just a few reasons why we need to teach these skills explicitly. Again, they need to be taught. They don't come natural. They're necessary for life skills throughout our life. Again, they help build independence. They impact our social skills. They support academics. They enhance our ability to problem solve and all of these other reasons. But they do require practice. And so we need to be making sure that we're practicing these every single day. And they can be embedded in just simple everyday things that we're already doing. We can just add those to the things that we're already doing. Executive function is something, like I said, that can be taught during math, during reading, during writing, during recess, during PE, all kind of things. At the lunchroom, how many executive functioning skills do you think you need when you even enter the lunchroom or walking down the hall? There's so many different ways that we need this. Strategies for supporting. And again, I just put some bullet points here to pull out from this graphic. But, when we talk about setting up binders for our kids, the more that a student can help you and be involved in helping to set up that binder, the more that they're going to start even realizing why they're setting up this binder. Okay. There's so many different reasons why some kids may need a list of make a checklist, making sure they didn't forget what homework they need to do, or and make sure that those things are listed in the same area. If they have to look for them continually, where'd that list go? That's really important to have it in the same place in their binder so that they can start learning, oh, that's why it's great to be organized. I know where they are, right? This one I'm going to point out is really important, is allow time for them to organize before they have to move on to that next transition. There's nothing more frustrating to a child or to anyone really if at the very last second you're like, oh yeah, you've got to hurry and put that in there, get it in your binder. And of course, that's adding more stressors to them, right? And of course, we know this has also been backed up by research, but incorporating movement during instruction can sometimes help kids who need that to help it stick, to help them retain. They can also music is a huge way that we can help kids remember. How many times did you sing the ABC song to learn your ABCs as you were growing up? And so there's so many different things and ways that we can do that. But making sure that extra materials, sometimes kids might need a book at home and a book at school. Sometimes we have families who are not as supportive. And so to let the kids have those things, to make sure they have it in a couple of different places can be really helpful for them to be successful. But again, that doesn't have to be for all kids, only those who are going to need it, right? So we're going to take just a couple of minutes. I know we're a little behind tonight with having some issues with technology here, but we'll do a couple of little rounds of this. I know you've all played Simon Says, so I want you to take a second, and I really wish I could see you during this one, but start thinking about, we're going to be using a lot of your different executive functioning skills as we play this game. So just first, take 1 second and get settled where you are. And take your left hand, tap it twice on your head, and touch your nose, and then touch your chin. How many of you went ahead and did that? Give me a thumbs up if you did it. I didn't say Simon Says. Now I want you to, Simon says, to touch your nose, touch your ear, touch your knees, touch your toes. How many of you did it that time? Great. Simon did say that time. When you're in a room and you're in a big room together and you're doing this with kids, it's a great way to help them be flexible. Games are such a great way. If you even just go on and put it in and say games for executive function activities, there's so many. Blurt is another great game. It really helps kids to not blurt out things. Working memory, though that old game that we used to play as kids, the memory game where you can flip 2 cards over and see if they match, they're all things to support executive function. So it's just a really fun way, because guess what? Learning can be fun. Learning should be fun. And so the more ways we can find for them to do it and to where they want to do it and not even realize they're learning, is definitely the best way to go about it. Supporting behavior. This one is something that is so important, especially in today's world. We're finding, and I know that you already know this, but we're finding that behaviors are increasing in all levels, even down to preschool. I know it's crazy. How bad could they be, right? But it's bad enough that some of our teachers are leaving because they don't have the supports, or their paras are leaving. So we need to make sure we have not only the skills, but the supports that we need in place so that we can help each other to be able to continue doing this great work with all of our kids. So let's take a look at, what does supporting behavior look like? Definitely we need to make sure those rules and routines and all of those things are posted and in multiple formats so that kids know and understand what they are. We need to model those skills and strategies every day. I promise, not just at the beginning of the year, but we continuously need to model these skills and strategies. It's, some of the best supports that I've seen is not just the adult saying to the kids, make sure you get, you've got to sit still. You can only do this and, make sure you get this out. And yet the adult's on their phone or the adult's over there talking to another adult. The adult's not participating in the way we're asking the kids to participate. And I'm not saying that we, of course, we need to be using proximity control. We need to be moving around the room, but there's times for modeling. And so make sure that we're doing that. Addressing behavior, it needs to be timely and done positively. Negative, I'm sure you've seen many times, anytime we address behavior in a negative manner, it doesn't usually end well. We need to remain attentive, calm, and proactive instead of just reacting to everything. Provide scaffolding and individual support, provide consistency and predictability. And then this is really very important. We need to meet those students where they are. And also take a second to just think, what do you feel about behavior? Those behavior kids, do we love them? Do we have a little empathy for them? Or are we just like, oh my goodness, they're here today? By the way, almost all of our behavior kids that I've ever worked with, they're not absent very much. And there's a reason for that. And many of them, even though their behavior might be off or, escalating through the year, just get to know your student, know why, show that empathy, show compassion to those kids. Some of those strategies could be the 5 to 1. Make sure that you're giving 5 praises to every 1 correction. I promise they're going to accept the correction a whole lot better when they have been given many different praises for what they're doing well. Make sure we're front loading. Make sure, tell them we're going to finish writing in 2 minutes, little Johnny. And if you're not done when the timer goes off, it's okay. Guess what? There's going to be time for you to finish this after math. So if you don't finish, I'm going to help you get it done. Okay. It's really huge for them because some kids, they don't want to be behind. They don't want to be late. They want to make sure that give them an opportunity to succeed by giving them that front loading piece. Model positivity. Let them know, hey, I really appreciate the way you raised your hand and you waited for the teacher to call on you. This is another piece. This is something that I hate to see when I, in other classrooms that I've seen where the little kids raising their hand, and they're never getting called on. What do you think happens when they never get called on when they raise their hand? A couple of things might happen. One, they may just get totally frustrated and blow out, right? Or they may just stop raising their hand and not even trying to participate. And so we need to make sure that we are calling on them and that we can help them be ready to answer, right? Maybe ask them, hey, I think you know this answer. What are you going to say when the teacher calls on you? Get them prepared for it. The when then statements are like, when your materials are neatly put away, then we can go to music class. So let's get them all done and put away right, okay? The us versus them, or us versus the problem, sorry, not them, us versus the problem is something like, hey, how can we get down the hall with everybody's voices like little mice, like we're quiet, like little mice? What can we do to turn this into us, meaning you and the student, versus the problem? So I'm sure most of you know that behavior is communication. It's some kind of communication. This is a great graphic. So I hope you'll take a minute to go back through these later and see what all it says. What we see, we can see bad behavior, right? We know what it looks like. But what we don't see, are they overstimulated? Are they afraid? Are they hungry? That's, I worked in a title school when I finished teaching. And how many times was it just because my kids hadn't eaten, right? So Did I have snacks, extra snacks in my room? Absolutely, I did. So, and most of your teachers, I'm sure, do too. Maybe it's some kind of misunderstanding that they didn't even know what happened. And I love this quote by Dr. Vanessa LaPointe. Says, "I have yet to meet a child who enjoys misbehaving. Rather, I see a child who is working to communicate a message about an unmet need in increasingly desperate and extreme ways." When children misbehave, excuse me, in the classroom, it can often be a sign of unmet needs, as we know. It could be a desire for attention. It could be a difficulty managing their emotions, a lack of understanding of those expectations, or underlying issues like anxiety or learning disabilities. And so we need to make sure that we are aware of our students. We're aware of what's going on. All right. When we look at, this is the crisis cycle, and we look at this, I don't have time to go through all of them, but I want to point out a few and some of the things that we can take a look at. They start out in a calm state. They move to something triggers them, something happens, they become agitated. The fourth part is it can become accelerated. And then that 5 is the peak of their crisis, right? And then eventually de-escalation and recovery. And so PROMPT is an acronym that stands for what can we do kind of to be proactive. PROMPT is that. And I don't think I got this on a slide, but if you have a piece of paper, maybe take some notes. PROMPT. So P is proximity control, like we talked about earlier. How can we do something? What can we do to make sure that we can try to keep them in that calm state? Proximity control has been one of the things that they've noted the most often can help, especially if you have a relationship with that child. The R is redirection. The O and the M is ongoing monitoring. Again, taking that data and monitoring that to see what those things, what's going on. The P is prompt expected behavior. Again, modeling. Model what we expect to see and what we hope to have happen. And then the T is teaching interaction. If we don't teach them the skills and the strategies for them to do that, we cannot expect them to have it. But these things have to be done while they're in that calm state. You can't wait until they're, past in that agitation stage and on up. It's not going to happen. And then triggers, what are those triggers? We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute when we get to the ABCs. So what might be driving their misbehavior? Again, we talked a little bit about that. Maybe they're seeking attention. Maybe it's coming from home. Maybe it has nothing to do with what's going on at school. And definitely those kiddos who are already struggling, if they have a disability in reading or math or writing, and they're already having a hard time, and then it continues to get harder. This is when a lot of behaviors I've seen happen. The biggest thing is make sure that it's not because they don't know the expectations and they don't know how to navigate the classroom. That's something we can definitely teach them. But the main goal is make sure that we know our students, make sure that we know what they're needing. We may not know all the details, especially if it's something about their home life. But if it is something like that, we can definitely be a little more empathetic. So let's talk a little bit about those ABCs. The A is the antecedent. So this is something that happens right before the behavior. It's something that involves what the students see, what they hear or experience in the environment right before they exhibit the behavior. And the behavior is definitely something that we can observe and measure, okay? This is not the part where we try to figure out anything. We're just observing and we're measuring. So anything that, and make sure that when we do, we're taking objective data and be clear. Again, I want to point out that behavior is something that's learned and can be taught, changed, or modified. It's not something that just because they act a certain way that they're always going to act a certain way. It is definitely something that can be learned on how to manage behavior and how to
Could you-
change behavior.
Tina, could you
Yeah.
explain again what prompt is?
Prompt
There's two
is
questions. Yeah, prompt.
is modeling. Yep. Make sure that we're prompting or modeling. Remember when we talked about those prompts from before last time? Make sure you're modeling what you expect to see. All right. And then the consequence is any response, action, or event that follows a behavior. And they can be positive or negative, right? Sometimes we think consequences are always bad. They're not. They can be good. They can involve something either being provided, which is gaining attention, earning a reward, or something that can be removed, like that their privilege is being removed or attention is withheld. So the goal of consequences, I love this quote too. If the behavior is not changing, we are not choosing the right consequences. Um, I have, and I'm sure many of you have heard her speak, and some of these I want to note here too, that some of the things you're going to see from here come from Christine Manning. Not all, but some of them do. She is a fabulous expert on behavior. And, I love this part because truly, she totally teaches that behavior is a science. It's something that we can change. Okay. So this is just a slide again for time. I won't take time to go through this whole slide, but definitely, the before is that antecedent. What's happening? Was it part of a pattern? And then once we know triggers that our students have, we need to make sure we're avoiding those kind of things to happen, right? As much as we can. Some things are out of our control and we can't control those. But that's when we're teaching those executive function skills, flexibility is one of those huge things that when those things come, what can we do, right, to help strengthen their ability to be flexible. And then if something went during the time when it's happening, it's really important for us as the adult to remain calm. Is that easy? No, not always, right? We have feelings too. I know that. Whether I was a para or a teacher, or a mom or a grandparent, sometimes we have feelings when those things come up and those behaviors happen. But the more you can remain calm, you're going to help control that situation. The minute you match their anxiety or their behaviors in any way, it's going to escalate. It will not end well at that point. And then, of course, make sure you're assessing the severity and the safety. If it's a really dangerous situation, and there are times when it is, you need to make sure that you've already talked to your teachers about, what is the plan for that. Make sure that safety is definitely number one, right? Know when to engage or ignore. That goes back to that poking the bear. There are so many times when somebody tries to step in at either the wrong time or in the wrong way, and it can make things 10 times worse than it ever would have been. So make sure that you're knowing when to do that, when to step in, when to ignore that behavior. Yeah, and anytime, if they're already during the behavior, this is not the time to try to reinforce new skills or have the teacher teach new skills. Not going to happen. But definitely during that time, you can start thinking about, why is this behavior happening? This is when you start making those notes of what happened right before the behavior so that those things can be discussed after. Not just with your teacher, but then gives the teacher an opportunity to come back and actually do that explicit teaching. And so after, what's the logical consequence? Not punishment. Punishment never changes behavior. Consequences do, but not punishment. Provide empathy and emotional safety. Definitely. Like we talked about before, you always want to make sure you're praising in public and disciplining in private. And so, but that comes back on your teacher. It shouldn't be you delivering any kind of discipline. decide to replace that annoying or extinguishing behavior, right? If it's dangerous. So again, you have to be assessing that all the time. And I should back up for a second. There's times that the teacher will have you help to support what discipline has been put into place, but it's not you having to make the decision on what discipline is going to be given to that student or the consequences given. And then of course, determine appropriate tools. And then in between, this one is number one for me. And I think you'll agree with this. You need to not only build, but maintain strong relationships and positive relationships with your students. They're going to listen to those who know they love them and who know they care. And so, and again, being mindful of their triggers, I think is also such a huge part. All right. So,
Dina,
yeah.
I don't think I answered the question, asked the question right. And there are several people that want to know what the acronym for prompt is. From last time, did you do an prompt as an acronym? What the letters stand for?
Discussed it. So here's what I'll do. It's for sake of time. When I send the follow-up email, I'll put it in the email, or I'll
Perfect.
put it on the slide before I send. I'll do that. I'll put it on the slide before I send them out. So then you have it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. I just discussed it. I didn't have it on a slide. So let's talk about the ABC examples. And again, antecedent, behavior, consequence. So you'll see the ABC, that's what those stand for, okay? So let's look at that. Number one says teacher hands out a math test. That could be the antecedent. The student screams. That's a behavior. This teacher sends the student to the office. That's the consequence, okay? I won't go through here and read them all, but now I hope you get the idea of the antecedent is what happened right before. Doesn't mean it should have caused a behavior, but sometimes it does, right? And then the behavior is what you can see, what you can measure, okay? What can be observed, what can be measured. And then the consequence is either, like I said, positive or negative, something that happens after. So we're going to take just a few minutes to practice this. Let me just see. We're going to have to just do one and move on just for time. I didn't realize we're already into this time. So it's a Thursday afternoon in November. A 5th grade student named Paul walks out of the classroom when the teacher puts his science test on the desk. The test must be made up during lunch the following day. So quickly, if you have some paper, what's the antecedent? Write that down. What's the behavior? And then what's the consequence in this scenario? I'll give you just a minute to do that. Thank you for the thumbs up. That will help. Perfect. Looks like they're all coming in now. So let's take a look and see. Let's check your work here. So the antecedent, as soon as that child saw the science test, right? The behavior is he's out of there. He's walking out of the classroom. The consequence is, hey, guess what? You still have to make the test up, right? And just so happens that it's going to have to be during lunch the following day. So these are all in here so that you can go back and look. I just want to point out that remember that our kids are also human. Guess what? If somebody do you remember being in high school, in junior high, and somebody broke up with you? This could make a huge effect on a child, right? So if Barry's girlfriend just broke up with him, look what's going on here. And so, you know, you can see here that it definitely can have an effect. And then let's talk a little bit about the function of behavior, though. When we talk about the relationship, environment affects behavior and behavior affects the environment. right? If you have something going on in the environment that can cause a trigger for a child, the behavior happens, but then that behavior is definitely going to affect the environment and all of those people within that room. So how are they functionally related? Cause and effect, right? Just like we said. This one is an actual positive one, but you know, if you have a preschooler, she walks into the class and sees her friends, she waves and says hello to her friends, and her friends smile and say hello back to her. And so all of these different scenarios, how is it affecting them differently? Behavior also serves as a function. So if we look at why is the person doing this certain behavior, and what are they trying to get or get out of by doing that behavior, right? So again, those two main functions of behavior are what? Number one, to get something, or number two, to avoid or escape something. It could be to have access to an item or an activity. It could be for attention, good or bad. It could be to escape or avoid something non-preferred, not good at, or not interested in, right? And sensory, to access to and or escape from. So let's take a quick look at that. Again, those ABCs, antecedent, behavior, consequence. The antecedent is Jack sees a piece of candy. Okay. He says, candy, please. That's his behavior. And then the candy is given to him. The result is he gets the candy. And the function of that behavior is candy, please. He knows that that's access to the candy, right? So let's practice really quickly. Again, you don't have to necessarily jot it down for time, but in your mind, a 4-year-old child was running and fell down. He was not hurt, but began crying loudly. He received hugs and cuddles. So the antecedent, he was running and he fell down, right? The behavior, he's going to cry loudly because it hurts. And the C is he gets hugs and cuddles. So the function of the behavior, if we take a look at that, what is the function? He wanted access to that attention, that comfort, right? Because he ran for it to get the hugs and cuddles. What do you think is going to happen to a child if he goes over to get hugs and cuddles from being hurt and he's turned away or denied that? Pretty soon it starts changing behavior. And again, I'll let you go through these. I've got a few in there for you so you can take a look at that. But I want to stop here for a second and just concentrate on consequences. Consequences determine future behavior. Again, consequences determine future behavior. Sometimes we think when we're giving something that the child wants, how many times do you think a child who is in a grocery store and wants a candy bar and you say no, they throw themselves on the floor and start tantruming and they get their candy bar, you think they're going to do it the same thing next time? Yep, I guarantee it. You know, we start forming those behaviors based on those consequences. So we really have to think it through. Here you can see they can increase future behavior, decrease or eliminate future behavior, or maintain. So it's one of those three is going to happen. You're either going to increase it, and of course we want to increase positive behavior, right? So we have to think about how we're doing these things. Yep, just like I had said before, if the consequence gets the person what they want, most likely that behavior or similar behavior will continue to occur. This is a science. It is going to happen if we continue to do it that way. If the consequence does not get the person what they want, the behavior is more likely to change. So let's talk a little bit about prevention. Again, managing our environment, providing visual supports for our kids, those are huge. Whether they can read or not, visual supports are they're so important for all levels and ages of students. Peer support is huge. When we can have peer mentors or some kind of mentoring program in our schools, I've seen schools turned around by having this kind of support with peers. Making sure that there's differentiation. Again, this is not your job, but actually making sure that it's supported is. Making sure we're giving those kids ample time to not only just complete assignments, but ample time for processing and ample time for organizing, ample time for all of these different pieces to help them be successful. And preferences. Do we know what is going to help them? What are those things that's going to help when they want those preferred activities? Do we know what's going to move them? We all are driven by something, right? You go to work every day. Sometimes it may be because of a paycheck. It may be because you just love, helping to support kids and you want to make a difference. It might be all of those things included, right? But we all have preferences and we all have things that drive us. And then, of course, Maslow before Bloom. And we definitely want to make sure that those foundational needs, hunger, safety, those things have to be there before they can learn. And then prevention, those tips. Make sure that, again, that you're building and maintaining those relationships with your students. If you wait until your student is escalated, it's not going to happen. We need to practice prevention all day, every day. When we look at those kids in our classrooms, we don't always know what they've come to us, but we need to meet them where they are. We need to make sure, just as much as we would like for them to, for others to treat us that way, we need to be making sure we're treating our students that same way. Do we know what their needs are? Do we know how we can help them, how they best can be helped? When you get to know your students on that kind of level, they're teachable. And because they want to learn, skills that should be taught. When we, this is going to go back to, again, those executive function. I feel like we could have done an entire session on executive function and still not cover all the things that should be talked about. Because most of the time we have, the academic strategies. We don't always have what we need to support behavior. We don't always have what we need to support executive function. So if you feel like you don't have some of those skills, some of those strategies, make sure you're going and you're talking to your supervising teacher to help with that, because those are going to help move the needle the most. Because kids can't learn if they're acting out. Kids can't learn. Most time, kids around them can't learn if they're acting out either, right? And so it's really hard to do that. So we need to really focus on some of those things. Not that the academic strategies and instruction, I'm not saying those are equally important, but we need to make sure that they have the best opportunity to learn by making sure that we have those other supports in place as well. Do they know about other people's perspective? Do they know that it's important to at least listen to others' opinions, and that our opinion's not always the best way, right? Do they have those self-regulation skills? This one, especially as they're young, if we can help them to start building how to self-regulate, it's going to make such a difference when they get into those upper grades. And of course, our academics, but those relationships and those social and behavior skills, they're just so vital, not just in school, but as we talked about, when they get to an age where they're going to need employment. If they haven't learned some of these things, people get fired over many different things. But, if they can't organize and their time and they can't, be flexible about those things, a lot of times they get fired over those things because whether they're late all the time or they're unable to manage their emotion and something happens at work and they, just fly off the handle and do something irrational, they get fired over that. So these things are going to be, this is why I say, when is the best time to teach all of these skills? Of course, when they're younger, right? If we can start in preschool, we can start building those kind of skills so that they get really good at it by the time they're, you know, in fourth grade, junior high, high school, it's going to make their life so much better for when they're adults. And even in relationships, we see it, right? How many times do you see, you know, you're in a job and you see, like I said, some adults who haven't been able to figure these skills out. It can be really hard to deal with that. And in fact, our final session, this leads me into talking just a little bit about that. It's going to lead us to not want to work there anymore. You know, if we have people who we just can't figure out how to work with others who are difficult or students who are difficult. You know, this next session, I hope you're able to join me for that one. We're going to talk about just self-care and how to take care of yourself along the way, because we do need you. You are so vital to our kids. You're so vital to our families and to our teachers, and into the success of not just their academic career, but their entire educational career, which is going to affect, like I said, their employment, and just life in general, right? And so it's so important that you know that you're valued, and it's so important that you find ways to take care of yourself as well along the way, because it's hard. Just to close up, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for joining me through these sessions and to go over some of these things. And I hope you have a really happy Thanksgiving. The next few slides are going to give you a little more information, so don't clock off yet, but I want to make sure that you get all this information. So again, session 5 is here. It's going to be December 5th from 4 to 5:30. And we'll just have a good time together. There's going to be some things. I'm going to be sending you a little bit of homework to do before our next session. So be watching for that in your follow-up email from this session. I'll have that and I'll send it out a couple of times to make sure you get it. All right. I know that I usually get a lot of emails asking about the recordings. Again, all of the recordings are going to be at this link. When the recording is available for this session, as soon as it's available, I'll send out the email and it will be posted at this link. Not just the recording, but also the PowerPoint slides. And if there's been any other handouts along the way, those will also be there for you. If you scroll down to the bottom of that, to this link, when you go there, it says previous recordings, trainings. If you click on that, you are welcome to go in there and take a look at all the different trainings that we've done. Some of it may not pertain to you, but most of it will, I promise. And it's done by topic. So if you just click on the topic, you'll see all the virtual trainings that we've offered that's been recorded, so that you can go and look at those as well. There's so much for you to be able to continue learning. Those will not be for credit, of course, but they're still there for your use. All right, I know many of you have been waiting for this. So this is your attendance and participation. You can either use the QR code or type in that link. I'm going to see if I can, let's see if it'll let me. No. I will type this into the chat for you in case. I know that some people have had a hard time with the QR code with their phone. So I'll type it into the chat for you so that you can go there. And so I know it's a little easier to do that. And then let me make sure. Sorry, I'm having a hard time doing this and those executive functioning skills, doing two things at once. I want to make sure I have it in correctly. So, all right, there's the link for you to go ahead and do that. And then when you get the slides, these are live links. So if something happened and you were unable to do that, it'll be in your follow-up email, and it will also be in the slides for you to go and get that done, especially for those of you who were unable to join me tonight. Again, this is the only one that that you'll have permission to view the recording and then go fill out this participation. The others were required to be here in person for you to receive credit. And so whether you're seeking PTSB or STARS credit, make sure that that you have filled out all of these participation forms for each session. And then at the last session, you will get there will be another form where you will put in your PTSB information or your STARS information so that we make sure you can get credit for that. It's a great opportunity for you to be able to get credit. And especially since, you've been here not just for, your own professional development, but to also get those credits in, especially if you are a teacher. The STARS credit, I had a question about that earlier. STARS is for early childhood folks. So maybe you have both. Maybe you're dually certified and you want to keep your STARS up, or maybe you're in the preschool setting. So either one of those you'll be able to get. And you can get STARS and PTSB credit at the same time. So like, I know that you cannot get University of Wyoming credit and PTSB credit simultaneously, but you can get STARS and PTSB credit simultaneously. So make sure you get that filled out. And again, I just want to tell you, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time with your families if you're able to have families around you. If not, whoever you're celebrating with, I hope you have a wonderful and safe holiday. And thank you so much for your participation and for your patience, especially this time with all the technical difficulties. But I really appreciate you. Know that you are appreciated and we need you. The kids need you. And so I will see you next time on December 5th.
Hey, Dina, there are about a dozen comments that says the bit.ly link doesn't work when they type it in. So I just wanted you to be aware.
All right. Let me see if I can find another quick way for you to do that. Give me 1 second.
If not, it could be a different one could be sent in the email, correct?
Yes. If you cannot do it right now, I will put it, I always put it in that follow-up email so that you can get to that. Maybe what I have to do right on this one, because it's not, it's not even typing in correctly for me either.